oh yeah, this one time somebody shot at me. There was a firing range right there, and then RVs were camped right next to it. How do I feel about camping on BLM land now? Well, given all of this, a while back, I put out an episode about some troubling patterns I'd seen on BLM land that made me worry that perhaps it wasn't safe for RVers. I was really honest in that video. I was very frank about the fact that I didn't have any firsthand experience with it, and just reflected what I had seen in forums and videos, people talking about it, people who had that firsthand experience that I was relying on because I hadn't done it. And I was brutally honest, and I just put that video out there, not expecting too much of anything. It was kind of one of those days where I was just speaking my mind, and I was really surprised to find that that video really took off. People really wanted to watch it. Y'all had a lot to say, both positive and negative. It really blew me away, to be honest. In fact, there was enough of a response that I realized I had to make this episode, this follow-up episode, because I did hear from so many of you. So today I want to talk about everything I learned from the response to that video, as well as talk about my current views of the safety or danger of BLM land. Okay, so first off, I'd like to sort of talk about the comments and summarize those. They were very mixed. There were some people that were like,
"Lady, you need to calm down. Why are you so worked up? I've never had an issue with BLM land. You're just getting worked up with the hype with these kind of clickbaity articles and videos."
And that is a fair point of view. I had wondered when I had read all that, what kind of validity there was to that. Now, I don't know if I'd be making this video though, if that was the only comment I received, because it really wasn't. I also heard from people way on the other end of the spectrum who said that my worries were justified, that it had gotten very rough out there, and that people who were commenting that I was overreacting either were very lucky or hadn't been out there for a while, that it had changed a lot as RVing has become more popular post-pandemic and more people have gotten into the lifestyle. You have more and more people coming, and with that you get all sorts of people. You get great people, yes, you get wonderful people that you would love to have as neighbors, and then you get all sorts of riffraff that you don't want as neighbors as well. And with something like the BLM land, the Bureau of Land Management, the federal lands that are set aside for public use, a lot of them are either free or low cost to camp on, so it's open to the public, right? They're public lands, and so there's no real barrier to entry. So if there are riffraff, they can come there. So, people kind of went back and forth on that. There were, in fact, a lot of people who said I was right on the money and that BLM land had actually gone downhill in recent years and had become more of a risk than it was before. But again, other people said I had nothing to worry about and assured me to give it a shot. So it was really, really mixed. In fact, I had some people who happened to be in the middle of these 2 points of view, believe it or not, where they started out saying, there's nothing to worry about, this is really overhyped. And then they're like, oh yeah, but this one time somebody shot at me. They were like, oh yeah, this one time somebody shot at me, in the middle of talking about how safe it was. So it was kind of like, well, it's safe, but these dangerous things are happening, or they'd forgotten about it, because overall, overwhelmingly, most of their BLM land, public land camping experiences had been positive. But in fact, dicey things happened on occasion. So, that's kind of a mixed picture of things. And then at that point, it's like, well, is one really scary thing happening enough to ruin the whole experience or not? Some people would argue, yeah, that's enough. Other people would argue, of course not. So I think there's a lot of wiggle room here, and I think the actual picture of what's going on out there is a lot more complex than people would have you believe. And in addition to just the reactions, the questioning of the validity or saying I was right on, there's some other comments that filled in the gaps of things that I didn't mention as far as dangers in my first video. Now, if you want to see what I talked about in the first video, I will link it below so you can check it out after this one. But in particular, there was one large thing that I left out in my initial video, and that is the fact that there are shooting areas on a lot of federal land, places where you can specifically go and fire off firearms. And you would think that people who are in RVs that are camping wouldn't want to be near the firearm ranges, but you would be wrong. Actually, after I posted that episode, between then and now, we went out to Utah, we checked out Zion, we went to Salt Lake. We went through a lot of federal land in Utah, and we actually saw one where there was a firing range right there, and then RVs were camped right next to it. So on one hand, if people are being responsible there are always ways to use firearms responsibly. On the other hand, you're in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if I would trust strangers to do target practice responsibly next to my rigs. Now, for all I know, the people doing target practice were in those rigs, and so there was that kind of trust built up there. But at any time somebody come along, use the land for that intended purpose, and then I can't imagine you don't want somebody doing that next to your house. And then an RV is another level of, fragility and exposure to the elements. The stray friendly fire, it's another risk of some of the federal lands that I didn't touch on in my original video, and thank you so much for the viewers that pointed that out to me. I saw that after I went through and I was like, oh yeah, that's part of why I wanted to make this episode. In addition to all the comments, I got some good emails sent through the channel address, and here's one that I thought was really interesting. This person has a perspective that I don't, but here it is. Admittedly, I don't know much about BLM land from an RVR perspective. I think that's recreational vehicle recreation. But I do know from a hiking and bike touring perspective that free campgrounds are sketchy and paid ones are preferable because the people who take advantage of free campgrounds are sometimes dangerous people. So it's annoying because, everybody loves a free resource. Like, times are tough. The economy is not great. We all need more money. And a lot of us, especially, retirees on the road, that's not us, we're working stiffs, but we have a lot of neighbors that are retirees, are on a fixed income. So free camping is a boon and makes this life a lot easier. And for some people, possible in the first place. But unfortunately, when things are free, you attract all sorts. And apparently this is not a phenomenon that is isolated to the RVing community. This is something that has proliferated to the general camping community, the hiking and biking, touring communities. So thank you so much for that perspective. I don't have any interaction with that community, so I really appreciated that. And it still remains difficult, especially if you're a woman on the road. There are people that are going to take advantage. There are scary incidents happening everywhere. And actually, since that original episode, a prominent RV YouTuber, Robin from Creativity RV, put out an episode about a scary encounter with a man asking for nonsensical help and attempting to get in her camper. That is worth a watch. If you haven't seen it already, I will link that as well below. But it really does make you think and make you worry. These are not isolated events. I think I've had 3 episodes now where creepy things like that are happening that I've been able to show you folks. It's kind of like what they say about speeding. If you're picked up for speeding once, that's probably not the only time you sped. There's probably all kinds of other times that you sped and didn't get caught. So if there are these incidents that are being shown in the way that we do our social media, YouTube, articles, whatnot, even on Facebook, if we're hearing about these, there's going to be other incidents that we don't hear about, or that we hear about only when it's too late, when somebody unfortunately has completed a crime. So something to keep in mind. At the end of the day, I think these things can happen anywhere, to be honest. And it very much reminds me of an important lesson I learned in a book called The Gift of Fear. Now, a lot of you may have heard of this book already. If you haven't, it is a fabulous read for everyone, frankly, but especially for women. And I will link it below. But The Gift of Fear talks about how when things get weird, when we get a bad feeling, we get that feeling in our gut like something's off. And that's kind of the first seed of fear, this feeling that something's wrong, something's going awry. And unfortunately, a lot of women are socialized to be polite to strangers, to not be rude to strangers. And so if you get somebody that is up to no good, has ill intent, they will abuse this tendency towards politeness that a lot of women are raised to have and force you basically to be rude. So there's this whole war that takes place in the pit of your stomach where you're like, I have a bad feeling about this, but I don't want to be rude to this person. The author of this book has learned a lot by studying women who were victimized, women who got away. Be rude. Be rude to the stranger. If you feel like something is off, it is off. Risk being rude. It's okay to be rude to somebody in order to save your own life. I cannot stress that enough. And that feeling of, ooh, this is weird in the pit of your stomach is a gift. That is the gift of fear. It is there to protect and save you. So this is true whether you're in the most bougie RV park in the world with a gate and somebody's acting weird, or whether you're off in the middle of the desert on a firing range. If something doesn't feel right, if you feel off about it, trust your fear. Anyway, given all of this, how do I feel about camping on BLM land now that I have heard from all of you and done some more research and looked into the matter some more? Well, given all of this, I am open to camping on BLM land, especially if we get a rig that's better suited to it. I mentioned in another video that we might be looking into getting an older Class A bus. It's on the list of things we might do. We have a lot of life priorities and a lot of changes going on right now. We're also looking for land and perhaps a house. But yeah, if you want to see more about us potentially getting a bus, see that video. I'll link it below. But the larger tanks and possibly a better off-grid solar situation would make BLM land camping a lot more feasible for us, especially if we were outside of one of the established campgrounds and we were just on land. But if we do that, I need your help to do that. So let me know in the comments below, where do you camp in public lands? What are your best strategies for finding good places to camp? It's okay if you don't want to tell me, if you want to keep it all to yourself, but I would appreciate any help I can get, especially as pertains to what would be a good newbie-friendly situation. Thanks in advance for that, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.